Hello and welcome back to the Media Stand, where I still don't have an intro, but if you were curious about the February releases from Vinegar Syndrome, I'm going to talk about them. Now, this is only the standard releases, because that's what came in my subscription. I didn't get any sub-labels or partner labels, because I spent all my money on porn. And Millicene sent me this condom, and I got real excited, because I thought I won a free trip to the porn vault. I've got a golden condom. But I have the three main releases here from February. We're going to talk about Spanish Bloodbath. Three movies that are kind of like Spanish Jolly. This is another one where I'm like, this very easily could have been a box set. Three different cases, one box. We know they know how to do that. You do get 3 discs, and each one with their own movie, special features. So it very easily could have been a bigger box set. But you have your case and your slipcover. It's pretty cool. So the first film in this, Night of the Skull from 1974, is a Jess Franco flick. So we get Jess Franco and obviously Lena Romay. Black-gloved killer with a purge mask murders a baron, and then a whole series of events starts to unfold. When the baron is murdered, his family is gathered and his will is read. There are 2 wills that are specific to how he dies. If he dies of natural causes, they read 1 letter. If he dies of murder, then they have to destroy the first one and read the second letter. In the second letter, he talks about how his estate and all his belongings will go to his daughter, Lena Romay. And then the rest of the family gets pissed off. The original letter and a different will that he put together spoke differently about how his inheritance were supposed to be divided, and the mysterious circumstances of his death spiked an investigation where an inspector has to come in and determine what happened. So it's basically Knives Out. But as the family is there and start to investigate more, and the inspector starts to look into things, some different details start to emerge. Apparently there was a doppelganger that wasn't the real Baron. And then we get into spoiler territory. Screw it. Spoilers. The original Baron is still alive, and he's the one going around killing everybody. He wants to get revenge on his family members who actually did attempt to kill him to get his inheritance. We get limited glimpses of Franco's normal MO, modus operandi. We get a few nip slips of Lena Romay, a little bit of Bush through some wet panties, and a great wet nightie in a bathtub, and some promiscuous activity. But a very conservative result from a Franco-Romay outing. All in all, though, a really good Franco flick. You do have your things aren't in focus. You do have your weird zooms now and then. But just a nice little Spanish giallo from old Uncle Jess. So that moves us on to the second film in this set, Violent Bloodbath. This one's a bit weird and a bit slow. Basically, a family is murdered, which starts an investigation, and a judge shows up to look at the crime scene. And this is a judge who has apparently been overzealous with a death sentence. So he's made some enemies. And then there's a weird love triangle with his wife and some guy. But the judge and his wife go on vacation to this resort, and then murders start to pop up around the resort that mysteriously resemble cases he's worked before, where he has sentenced people to death. And there's less whodunit, less POV, black glove killer, less seeing these things happen. Often you'll come across the crime scene after everything has already happened. Spoiler, you find out that the judge was kind of doing it, and he had multiple personalities. It was some kind of projection of guilt. It was weird and not so much jolly-like. So then the third film, The Fish with the Eyes of Gold, is much more in line with the giallo, and actually might be the best in the set. I love Jess Franco, but this last one is good. In it, a man named Derek, a Lothario, arrives in Spain to visit his friend Zach, and then shit starts getting real. Murders start to happen, love triangles unfold, there's a lot of stuff about a museum. So obviously, because he arrives and this starts happening, the police think it's him. But he did seduce and go home with the first murdered victim. And then he has a connection to Zach, who witnessed a murder right before. So it doesn't look good. And the police try to label Derek as a sex maniac who's going around killing everybody. But Derek, insisting that he's innocent, starts to investigate and finds the connection of this little fish icon or imagery that seems to be apparent through all of the different murders. So he starts to unravel who could be the killer through that. All in all, 3 good movies. I wish this would have been a box set with individual Amore cases for each one, but I guess I understand why it was in a smaller case like this. And now, the Playgirls and the Vampire. A 1960 erotic horror that feels very much like it's from 1960. Directed by Fulci collaborator who wrote Demonia and Burial Ground, Piero Ragnoli. Piero Ragnoli. I don't know why I gave it a Lugosi accent. Maybe it's because this is basically just Dracula with a touch more sleaze. When some playgirls are traveling through the countryside and a rainstorm takes out their van, they take refuge in this old creepy castle where a guy says, "Oh, I could help take care of you." Also, one of them might be the reincarnation of one of their ancestors. So, obviously the old Dracula thing. And then they're like, "Hey, let's just use one of these big rooms to start, rehearsing our dance moves." And then one of them says, "Play some blues." And then she starts doing a little bit of a striptease. And just when it starts to get good, some old hag walks in and ruins it. But after some of the playgirl hijinks start to unfold, we get to some actually good horror when more of the vampire Dracula elements start to appear. The girl who is the reincarnation of the vampire's former lover starts to have some dreams that lead her to the crypts, and then the story of the vampire starts to unravel. Obviously, the vampire has targeted her, but because one of her friends was wearing her coat, followed a different girl outside and turned her into a vampire. Now they're both trying to hunt down the main girl, but then the girl that was turned gets jealous, and then like a weird fight breaks out, and vampire girl then goes to seduce another guy, and a very creepy and erotic moment, very similar to one in Malabimba, is some of the best cinematography I've seen from 1960. For a raunchy, erotic Italian Gothic horror, parodying Dracula, it's actually pretty darn good. And now for the Saul Bass film, Phase 4, brought to you with this beautiful hard case that's just white with a bunch of ants. I know a lot of people were complaining about the artwork on this, and I mean, yeah, it's very minimalistic. There's not a whole lot to it. Yeah. Let me show you what it sounds like empty. Ah, well, that was fun. Inside the hard case, you get your film on 4K with a slipcover that is actually better artwork. And yes, I agree. This could be the outside, and I think a lot more people would be happy. It is a stacked release with 3 discs, 2 Blu-ray, 1 4K. And inside, you do get this little booklet full of storyboards of the film, and it's actually really cool. Just looking through shot by shot. And you get this perfect bound book with really good essay about the film. But in the film, you get so many macro shots, and honestly, they are beautiful. They look so good, and they're all with real ants. They actually hired somebody who was like a insect wildlife photographer to show them how to capture the ants right, and it's almost like the ants are acting legitimately in this movie. And then especially in 4K, the imagery in this film is just amazing. But for some weirdly unexplained reason, be it some kind of astrological phenomena or evolution, radioactive mutation, ants start doing weird things. Various species of ants suddenly start communicating with each other. They actually have like little meetings, and then they start to crossbreed and multiply. They see themselves as being under attack or under some kind of threat. So they figure, well, if we just outnumber everything, then we'll live forever. 2 scientists are set out to study these new ants for the purposes of developing a new insecticide that would help control them. When they get to a town that has been abandoned because of the ants, they find giant towers the ants built that are a bit ominous. They sit and wait for the ants to do something so they can study them, but the ants don't want to come out and play. So, being impatient, one of the scientists decides to shoot grenades at them. Yeah, that gets them active. And the ants invade a local farm. The scientists released a spray that covers everything in yellow, to include the farmers that have come to them for refuge. Oh my god, the ant hole hands. I don't like that. The scientists rescued a girl and one of them gets bitten. The ants carry a piece of the insecticide to their core, one by one, as they die off from its poison, until they get to the queen, who eats it and then pops out some yellow ants that are immune to it. Then the ants got together, made mirrors surrounding the research pod that then reflected sunlight at it, increasing its temperature, destroying the computers, making it really hot for them to live in there. And then the ants take out their radios, their AC. The dude who got bit starts to go a little crazy. Ants are lining up their dead like it's some kind of memorial. And this dude's arm is looking bad. The young scientist has figured out a way to communicate with the ants and is trying to send messages to them, but also interpret what they want. He then comes to the conclusion that the ants want one of them. He assumes that it's the other scientist. Kendra, the girl they rescued, assumes it's her because she got a little mad and killed some ants. So Kendra sacrifices herself in hopes that the ants would let the others go. But James, the young scientist, thinks they want Hobbs. Hobbs went crazy, went outside, fell into a trap, and presumably got eaten by ants. So James sets out to kill the queen. But in going to the core, he finds Kendra. And he realizes they wanted them both. They wanted to assimilate them and use them to carry on their mission. The whole thing is a bit nebulous and surreal, and I like that. That's pretty much my jam. And this is a very interesting sci-fi. It's not really high concept. It's not really hard science. It's kind of somewhere in between. Biggest thing for me was the cinematography and the macro shots. The way they filmed the ants is just beautiful. Amazing work. And the film looks great, especially in 4K. And of course you get this nice hardcover with the artwork that many people are displeased with. But I could put up with that because this was a good movie. And I'd say go pick it up if you're into sci-fi at all. So that is all the standard releases from Vinegar Syndrome, February 2024. Pick up what you like.